Hello! This is a Forge Scripting Advanced tutorial where I cover a concept I call the smart toggle. So with a regular toggle, this is a broadcaster that when you activate it will toggle on and off a broadcast channel, but the idea behind a smart toggle is that when you activate this, it will toggle one broadcast channel between off and on, and a second broadcast channel between on and off. The idea being that one broadcast channel is always in the opposite state to the other broadcast channel. And this allows you to do things that you couldn't do with a regular toggle. And what I'm going to show here is a very simple example of a situation where you would want this kind of toggle, as well as a very simple way of creating a smart toggle. So what I have here is I have an on-state toggle proximity trigger, and I have it broadcasting to channel 0. And then I have a garage door here listening on the same channel. And so when we enter, the garage door is going to open, and when we leave, it is going to close. And now I also have this light. And let's say that I want to make it that when I enter, the light goes on, and when I leave, the light goes off. Well, if I set this to the same channel that the other things are on, then what's actually going to happen here is the opposite of what I want. The light is going to go off when I enter, and it's going to go on when I leave. So I can't use channel 0 to get the behavior I want here on this light. So what I'm instead going to do is I'm going to set this to a different channel. I'm going to set it to 63. And now what I want to have happen here is that whenever channel 0 is turned on, I want 63 to turn off. And whenever channel 0 is turned off, I want 63 to turn on. Now, affecting broadcast channels using other channels is something you can do quite easily with timers. But the problem is that you can only have a timer activate when a broadcast channel is turned on. And this is, by using its power listener. The problem then is that you cannot have a timer that reacts to a broadcast channel being turned off. So I can't use a timer to get channel 63 to turn on whenever broadcast channel 0 is turned off. What I can do here though is if I duplicate this proximity trigger and I set this second one to be 63, and then I have them overlay each other and occupy the same space so that the zones are the exact same size and in the exact same position, then what will happen is that whenever I enter, both proximity triggers will activate, and both channel 0 and 63 will get toggled. And so when we enter there, they are both toggling. 0 and 63 are both being turned on and off. So one final thing I need to do then is I need to get 63 to be on at the beginning of the game. And I can just do that using a timer on once here, set to broadcast to channel 63. And then what this will do is it'll cause channel 63 to be on at the beginning of the game while channel 0 is still off. And there we go, we're now in that condition. And so then now when we enter, they will both toggle. And what will happen is that then 0 will toggle on, but 63 will toggle off. And that gives us the behavior we want. And then when we leave, they'll toggle back again, which again gives us the behavior we want. And so now we have our smart toggle. But you can do more than just turn on lights and close garage doors with this. It's really an introduction to a concept that allows you to create better toggles. So that was just a very simple example of how you can create a smart toggle which works with the proximity triggers. But let's see what happens if we try to do the same trick using switches. So I'm placing down a switch toggle here, which I will have broadcast to channel 0, which of course is the channel that the garage door is listening to, and we will then check that is working. And then what I'm going to do is the same trick that I did with the proximity triggers. I will duplicate the switch toggle, and I will set the second one to broadcast to channel 63, and then I will overlay these so that they are occupying the same space. And let's see what happens when we activate this. Well, the light came on, but the garage door didn't do anything. And the reason for this is that you can only activate one switch at a time. And what the game is doing is it's basically picking whichever switch it thinks is closest to you. And because we have these occupying the same space, it's a little bit random as to which one it picks. But the bottom line is that we can't do the same trick we did with the triggers with the switches to create a smart toggle. So we're going to have to do something else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a pair of switch ons here. And these can be used to turn on those broadcast channels. And then I'm going to have a pair of timer offs so that we can also turn off those channels. So we'll set the first switch here to be able to turn on channel 0, and the second one able to turn on 63. And this first timer able to turn off channel 0, and the second one able to turn off 63. And next I will overlay the switches here so they are occupying the same space. And unlike with the toggles, we shouldn't have any conflict problems here, because with a switch on you can only activate this whenever its broadcast channel is turned off. And since we will only have one channel off at a time, we will only be able to activate one of these switches at a time. So no conflict problems there. And the final thing to do is to set up the power listeners on these timers. So we'll go into the first timer here. And we want this to activate whenever channel 63 is turned on. So we'll set up its power listener to channel 63. And with this second timer, we want this to activate whenever channel 0 is turned on. So we'll set that to 0. And that should complete our setup. And what will basically happen is that when we go to activate the switch the first time, it will go ahead and turn on channel 0, and it'll activate the listener on the timer to turn off channel 63. And then when we hit the switch again, it'll go ahead and turn on channel 63, which will activate the listener that turns off channel 0. So we hit the switch, the light goes on and the door opens. And then we go ahead and hit the switch again, and the light goes off and the door closes. And so we now have the same behavior of the smart toggling that we did with the proximity triggers, but we're now using switches to activate it. But we have one last version of the smart toggle to show here. And to show that, I'm going to use the onDestroyed triggers. And of course, there's only one version of the onDestroyed trigger, and that is one that turns on a broadcast channel. Now with the setup that we already have, we can do something quite handy with these. So if I just place a pair of these down, and I set one to broadcast channel 0, and the other one to 63, and I get rid of the original switches here, and already what we have here is kind of an on-off behavior. This one turns it on, and then this one turns it back off again. And so that alone is kind of handy, but what if we want to have just one of these and we want some toggling behavior? And we can do this, but we need a different setup to do that. And I'll just initially place down all the timers that we need, and that is a timer off once. We need one of those. So I'll just get rid of the other two that we have over here. We don't need those anymore. And then we need a pair of timer toggles. And what I'm just doing here is arranging these in a way that kind of helps show the flow of what's happening when we activate these. And then with the trigger here, we actually need to set this to a different channel altogether. So I'm going to set this to 62. So of course when we hit this, it'll turn on channel 62, but then we can't hit it again, so that's not really allowing us to do much toggling there. That's where the timer off once comes into play here. What we do is we have this listen to channel 62, and then it will turn channel 62 straight back off again. I'm just going to reset the light here. There we go. And so now we can keep hitting this, which is something similar to what we'd expect from a toggle. And just to show that a bit better, if I actually put a 1 second delay on here, you can see the fading in and out of the trigger. So that's the first step. And now what we need to do is to use these timer toggles. We have these listen to channel 62, and then this one's going to broadcast to channel 0. And then the other one here is also going to listen to 62, but it's going to broadcast to 63. And so this is covering our smart toggle behavior. When we hit the trigger and it sets off 62, it'll activate both of these toggles, which will do their toggling, and then when we hit it again, we'll activate the toggles again. And so as you can see, we now have the toggling behavior that we wanted. And what I can do here now is set this back to having a 0 delay, so that there is now no delay on us being able to toggle these. Now, if you're going to have this with a 0 second delay, then there is something else to be aware of, which is that depending on the order of spawning of these timers into the map, what can actually happen here is this timer off can turn off the channel before these timer toggles have had a chance to activate. And then what would happen is you would get no toggling behavior at all. You would just get the switch turning itself back off again. But what we can do here is make use of the fact that we're turning on channel 63 5 seconds into the game. And so we can put the spawn channel of the timer off to be channel 63. And that means now that the timer off is going to spawn in after the timer toggles have spawned in. And due to the way that the kind of timer logic fires, that means that the timer off is going to happen last. And that will just ensure that we don't get any odd behavior with our smart toggle. As you can see here, if we have this on the 0 second delay, we kind of hit an interesting problem with a rapid fire weapon, and that is that every single bullet fires off the toggle. So you might actually want to leave a 1 second delay if you're going to use an on-destroy trigger. And what we have here really is kind of the definitive version of creating a smart toggle, where you have the broadcaster that kind of initiates it all, followed by a timer off and 2 timer toggles. And to show this, if I replace the on-destroy trigger here with a single switch on, and set it to that initiator channel, you can see that we, again here, still have the smart toggle behavior. And I could get rid of this switch on and replace it with some other broadcaster. And what I'll do here is replace it with the on stay on. And again, I'll get it to broadcast to that channel we're using to initiate all this. And you can see that when we go in, it toggles on, and when we go out, it toggles off. And now I'm just going to go through the examples from my previous videos showing how I was using a smart toggle to make those work. So this here is the one from my power listeners video, and here I was using this switch here to control the power, but also flick between a green and red light to show that this switch here had power. And that was using a 2-switch smart toggle technique, where I had the 2 on switches with the timer offs. And here in my spawning video, I was using a smart toggle so that when I first turn this on, there is a 5 second delay with a red flashing light before the building spawns in, but then when I turn it back off, there is no delay for when the building spawns back out again. And the way that I've done that is I have the smart toggle, and when you hit it the first time and turn on that broadcast channel, it activates these timers, which have the 5 second delays on them for spawning in the object. And then when you hit the switch again, you will turn on this broadcast channel, and then I have these other timers, which will be activated by that channel. And that allows me to turn the other channels back off again straight away for the building. And I need the smart toggle to be able to do this, because with a regular toggle I would not be able to activate these two timers here when I turn off the broadcast channel, because timers can't be activated by turning off channels, only by turning on channels. And then I have these set up here with the on-destroy triggers, and I'm actually using both smart toggle techniques here. I have the two switch technique down here to show an on and an off. And then I have the one switch technique here with my timer off and my two timer toggles. And then with this one, this was the one for my team specific enabled video. And I was essentially using the smart toggle technique here with a bunch of timers. And finally, this is one that I haven't shown yet, which I will be covering in my next video, where I'm basically using a smart toggle here with this proximity trigger, so that I can enable and disable that trigger, because you can't do it using its power listener, because unfortunately that is bugged. But that does cover the smart toggle, pretty much showing you the best way to create it, as well as kind of some reasons why you would want to use it.